Okay, so we're going to show you what formats you can actually purchase mycelium in.
So you can buy mycelium as a plate. So a colonized plate of mycelium looks like this. You can purchase this online normally. We'll give a list of some resources for that.
So you can buy, so the plates, and then you can also get liquid cultures.
Liquid cultures.
Which you can get in a syringe, and they look like this. This one, for instance, is from Mycelium Emporium, and depending on where you are in the world, there's tons of companies that sell just the cultures so that you can do this work at home. Also important to note that there is a difference between spore syringes and liquid cultures. In here we actually have some mycelium that is suspended or floating in this liquid medium, whereas in a spore syringe it's not yet the hyphae, it's not yet the mycelium that has come together. So the growing processes are a little bit different, though you can still expand them in the same way into some more liquid culture, which we will show you later how to do this. You can also convert this into this. So you can actually put a few drops of your liquid culture syringe onto an agar plate and allow it to grow fully, and then use that as your mother culture. How do we get to this?
Okay. Once you have a myceliated plate, you're able to make a transfer from the piece of agar to some clean, sterile grains. So this is an example of some myceliated grain that was purchased online.
You can find it most likely like this, and this is just from Bolets de Soca here in Barcelona. Shout out to you.
So you purchase the grains in order to be able to transfer that to a bulk substrate, and then you're able to grow the mycelium, or in our case we use it for making our microcomposites.
But you can also go straight from liquid culture to inoculated grains. And in that case, you would use something like rye, but you can also use millet, you can also use sorghum, you can also use barley. So as you can see, there are so many different ways that you can propagate and you can reproduce your mycelium cultures. Each step will take its own amount of time for the mycelium to fully grow into myceliate or to digest all of its nutrient source. But yeah, normally if you start from this phase, you will need to go to the agar, but again, you can also go straight to the grain. This will take a little bit longer. If you go straight from the agar to your grain, it will be a little bit quicker. So yeah, it's going to be a journey that you're going to take on and explore what works for you. Some people have different preferences, and there is no one correct way to do this. There are pros and cons to all of these processes. For instance, in liquid cultures, we can create a lot more grain spawn a lot quicker, but it's more difficult to tell if there is contamination in your liquid culture. It doesn't really show up normally. It's very, very difficult to see. Though it is also at the same time, paradoxically, a really easy way to expand your culture without the risk of so much contamination. So if everything goes perfectly right, if you have a really healthy, strong culture and your sterile lab protocols are on point, then really there's barely any place for contamination to happen when you inoculate into this enclosed space, from an enclosed space to another enclosed space. So there's nothing that is opening up like when you do a Petri dish and you actually need to open up your medium, and there's a chance that spores, yeast, and other contaminants land on your agar surface. And lastly, I just wanted to note that you can also save your cultures in slants. This is not necessarily the best way to expand your culture, but it's a good way to keep a culture library, meaning just having backups of your culture, which you do want to think about and you do want to do, because in case that you get contamination on all your plates or on all your grains, there's always something that you can go back to redo that process. And also, if you just have a really healthy culture that you've been able to cultivate, then you can save those genetics for later. The reason why this is such a good vessel for saving your cultures is that exactly like because it's slanted and it's such a small opening, it allows for less chance of contamination. It's not a large surface like a plate. So when you open it, it's a very, very little opening. And it retains the humidity a lot better. Plates can dry out a lot easier over time. So this is a good way to store cultures for a long period of time. And you would also do that in the fridge. You can keep them at like a hibernation.
As we were talking about before, the different ways of purchasing mycelium, you can buy it as a spawn in grains. But you can also buy it with the grains mixed with a substrate. I think in this case it may be hemp or straw and
some agricultural
byproduct. And basically this is ready to be fruited. Agar is a non-nutritious medium for growth. Basically it creates like a jelly-like material on top of the agar, on top of the plate. But in order to give it the nutrients for the mycelium to eat, we need to provide it with, some of the examples we have here are nutritional yeast. We have some activated charcoal. This gives it a nice color, but it also helps prevent too much contamination. Some spirulina in powder form.
You can use peptone as well. You can use potato dextrose. And you can actually also buy these forms of agar already mixed in like laboratory stores or online. But you can do it yourself. You can buy the potato dextrose, or you can actually make that out of potatoes yourself. It's a very lengthy process, but it's possible. And you can also provide it with some malt. This is like the most common form of sugars that you will find in like agar recipes for mycelium. So malt extract agar is the most common recipe that you will see being used for mycelium cultivation. For your liquid cultures, you can add a tiny bit of gypsum. You can also add this to your bulk substrate, and it's just gonna give it a little bit of calcium, which helps with the structural properties of the mycelium. Remember that mushrooms are made of chitin, and chitin is a molecule related to calcium carbonate. So if we give it some of that same structural property in the mycelium phase, then it's going to help it be that much stronger. That's it. Oh, and vermiculite. And what's this shiny thing?
This is a non-nutritious organic material that actually is used to maintain humidity within the substrate. Well, it's super lightweight, it's super shiny, and we use it during the fruiting process, but you can also use it when creating your substrate to maintain some humidity within it.
Thanks for checking out our cribs.